Ignite is an ongoing series of speedy presentations. Each speaker gets only 5 minutes and 20 slides that auto-advance every 15 seconds.
Hi, so my name's Timo and I'm going to talk to you about Japan. Japan is a fascinating and enigmatic country, but in my experience, Western webheads, which applies to most of you, have an unhealthy obsession with one particular narrow slice of Japan, and that's otaku or geek culture. So I want to invite you today to broaden your horizons and join me instead in having an unhealthy obsession with everything to do with Japan. So I'm going to present you with a few random examples culled from the last 20 years visiting and living in the country. Japan to me is a land of contradictions. It's ancient and futuristic, it's serious and hedonistic, it's staid and yet perverted. It's, a case in point is that sleeping on trains is completely pervasive in Japan. We're going to get a picture of this in a minute. There are websites devoted to photographs of Japanese people sleeping on trains. This is because they're chronically sleep deprived. Many Japanese people work insanely long hours. So imagine my surprise on arriving in the country and finding out that the ATMs close at 6 PM sharp. The Japanese language includes a word, tanshin funin, to describe the concept of living on your own, away from your family, because your company has moved you to another city. It includes another word, karoshi, to describe the phenomenon of death through overwork. So bear this in mind before you accept a job there. Japan is famously prone to earthquakes. This is an image from the 1923 Great Kanto earthquake in which over 140,000 people perished. And yet, in this land that rocks, what is the chosen form of domestic heating? It's the standalone kerosene stove. Shit, don't forget to put on your flame retardant pyjamas before you go to bed. Speaking of shit, Japanese toilets are famous for making defecation on the space shuttle look antediluvian. They will wash and massage your backside and dry it. They will play music and the sound of running water in order to discreetly hide your own noises. And yet, a surprising number of Japanese homes are not even connected to the sewage system. The truth of sewage disposal in Japan is often one of septic tanks and trucks like this hauling around loads of shit. The Japanese toilet seems to me to be the sort of equivalent of the Cray supercomputer connected to a 56K modem. Japan is based on convenience. For example, it has automatic doors everywhere. You can walk out of your taxi that has automatic doors, you walk into a restaurant that has automatic doors, and yet this always puzzles me. You sit down at the table in the restaurant and you're expected to cook the food for yourself. I never quite understood that. The Japanese language sensibly describes articles of clothing like this dress and foliage in general as green, and yet it would describe traffic lights and grass in particular as blue. Go figure. What's the next one? I can't remember now. Oh yes, the most wonderful word in all of Japanese is the word for seahorse, tatsu no toshigo. It means the bastard child of a dragon. English speakers often have trouble learning Japanese dealing with negative questions. The correct answer in Japanese to the question, so the guy in the balaclava isn't carrying a gun, is yes, he isn't carrying a gun. So that's another reason not to join the Japanese anti-hijack squad. This chart shows all the sounds of the Japanese language. It's called the Goju-on, which means the 50 sounds. So called because there's 51 boxes and 46 sounds. So much for Oriental numeracy. The Japanese language actually has different counting systems for different kinds of objects. So the number 3 is normally san, but if you're talking about round objects like this berry, it becomes mitsu. Number 9 goes from Q to kokonotsu, not to be confused with kokonatsu, which is the Japanese word for this thing. If you're not confused yet, you will be, because there are separate, distinct counting systems for long, thin objects like matches, pairs of chopsticks and also rice bowls, pieces of sushi, courses in a meal, portions in a meal, hanging scrolls, umbrellas and also tents. Sets of furniture and suits of armour, bows during a religious ceremony. And tatami mats, trays, mirrors and also game boards, letters, flat objects, cups of tea, cups of other things and also octopuses, sentences, magazines, books, trousers, pills, shoes and sets of clothing. People, the plain version, people, the polite version, groups of people and other things, companies, species, aeroplanes, warships, machines except for aeroplanes and warships, countries, languages, floors in a building, tools and also city blocks and pieces of tofu. Votes, colours, night staying, stroke jokes in Japanese characters, large animals, rabbits and birds, other small animals, and also ogres. Gunshots, and also fireworks and orgasms. This oddball oriental ontology is the way the Japanese language classifies the world. It just leaves me to say, domo arigatou gozaimasu, or thank you very much.